Welcome to the Fantasy Throwdown Podcast. The Fantasy Throwdown Podcast. Bringing you the latest from the world of daily fantasy sports and gambling, so you can stop Googling how to join a squid game to cover all those parlays you thought were such a sure thing. Now, sit back and listen to one of the sharpest minds in the game. Here's your host, Dwayne Callender.
Hello and good evening and probably good morning to the whole lot of you, quite frankly, given the hour this is coming in at now. But welcome to the show. This was going to be my initial thoughts of the NCAA brackets, but truth be told, we had major news breaking in multiple sports. So first off, Tom Brady unretires, announced his comeback on Twitter that he is coming back to the NFL for another season. You know, looking at the landscape of the NFL, I'm sure Brady was sitting at home, sizing things up, saying to himself, I have the worst division in football to come back to, with everyone else in the division in rebuild mode. If I just come back to the Buccaneers, everyone is migrating over to the AFC. Russell Wilson got traded. You've got basically the Rams and nobody else in the NFC that you're really afraid of. This is a prime opportunity to get back to the Super Bowl. And he got bored. Brady is turning 45 in August, people. 45. Brady's still trying to come back and play football. This is insane. But he literally spent we got less than a month of Tom Brady sitting at home before he's just like, screw it, I'm coming back. I'm back for more cash and another ring. Just wild. Absolutely wild. 45. And he's going to be playing football in the NFL. At quarterback. Just wild. And still better than the vast majority of quarterbacks because these guys can't throw. And the fact that the Giants are actually dumb enough to consider paying Mitchell Trubisky $16 million a year to be literally competition, if not surpass Daniel Jones, which isn't that hard of a bar to pass. Let's be honest with ourselves. It is wild to go nowhere in the NFC East. Oh man. What are we going to do here? I mean, the Seahawks make a rough trade to move on from Russell Wilson. I mean, that was a terrible divorce, but let's be honest. The Seahawks did not get that much in that trade. You couldn't figure out a way to pull off a 3-team trade for Deshaun Watson? Really? Really, Seattle? Really? Okay. Like, okay. Sure. Okay. I'm just saying, Seattle. You could have done better. Yeah, asking for Drew Lock in return, I'm like, oh, okay. Sure. Sure. Just continue to tank for 2 years and try to rebuild with your new franchise QB that you get in the draft. I guess that's the plan. It's just a rough way to go out for Seahawks fans. Mina Kimes literally is still in cope mode, but yeah, this is just wild. NFL free agency basically supplanting anything baseball did, because baseball, they may as well have just stayed locked out and waited past the first couple of days of NFL free agency before announcing a deal, because baseball is getting dwarfed. I mean, we got rumors of a Yankees terrible trade on the way, between Gary Sanchez getting dealt for Josh Donaldson, with the Yankees picking up Donaldson's tab and bailing out the Twins of a terrible contract. These are amateur hour moves being made by executives who are supposedly paid to know what they're doing, yet have less awareness than people who are literally gambling every day on baseball or just playing DFS. Who is trading for Josh Donaldson in this day and age? When the Braves moved on from Donaldson, the Twins bailed him out with a terrible contract. Why are the Yankees trading for this contract? Because I know the Twins are too cheap to pick up the tab for Donaldson's contract. You're like the rumor trade is Gary Sanchez for Donaldson along with Gio Urshela. What are you doing if you're the Yankees? I don't even think that trade helps the Twins because the Twins made a terrible trade to deal Mitch Garver in the first place. I mean, to get Connor Kalefa and a draft pick. I mean, I'm sorry. The Twins made a terrible trade with the Rangers. The Rangers didn't need more hitting. Like, it's rare that you see multiple teams make trades that really don't do anything to help them substantially long term. I mean, the only thing the Yankees, or if this trade pans out, the only thing the Yankees are helping the Twins do is shave payroll. Because Gio Urshela, while nice, isn't really going to hit that well in target field, in my opinion. And Gary Sanchez is so lost at this point that, barring a miracle, Ryan Jeffers is probably going to be more productive hitting than Gary Sanchez, which is insane because Ryan Jeffers is a replacement level catcher. But Gary Sanchez is so lost at the plate that in that massive ballpark, the power numbers are not going to be there. Like, that's the scary part. It's like, out of all the places that are going to want Gary Sanchez's services, the Twins ballpark, I don't know about that one. Because you need to be able to run in that. You need to be able to run when you hit the ball deep into the gaps. Gary Sanchez does not run well. You need to be able to have a defensive catcher because of the fact that it is so easy to hit doubles in that ballpark, and you need to have a catcher who can call a good game. That is something Gary Sanchez cannot do. You need to have a good defensive catcher to make sure that you keep runners off the base pass. Something Gary Sanchez cannot do. Like, realistically, we've got two separate baseball trades involving three teams, and I don't think any one of them got demonstrably better. In fact, most of them got worse. The Twins definitely got worse. I'm pretty sure the Yankees are worse with this Donaldson trade. Because now you are relying on Josh Donaldson and Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton to stay healthy for 120 games out of this season. At least 120. Good luck. Good luck. And mind you, it also locks down yet another DH spot of someone who's going to need to be circled in and out. DJ LeMahieu is now stuck at first base. Unless you're trading DJ LeMahieu. Like, the Yankees have got so many, way too many question mark holes. And just positional pieces that are non-interchangeable. They have one job, and they have a very limited scope of what they can actually do effectively. And they're getting older. Man, just bad all around. like there is nothing nice to say. Like, if this is the actual trade the Yankees are going to pull off. Because yes, Connor Kalefa can play shortstop, and he can also play catcher. But you really want him playing catcher because his bat is so mediocre that New York fans are going to get real tired of him real quick. Yeah. Like, this is this one, yeah. This one is sus, as the kids say. It's major sus. Oh man. I mean, really, it is hard to actually say anything positive about these two trades involving all three teams. I honestly don't think any of them got better, and I can make arguments that all three of them probably got worse. It's amazing these guys are paid as executives to make these deals. I'm not even sure you could get this trade approved in the show, to be honest. If you try it in the game, I'm not even sure that trade goes through. Oh man, quite the spectacle. Quite the spectacle indeed. Anyway, initial thoughts on the NCAA brackets. You know, it's an interesting breakdown because there are very few teams to feel really good about. I don't even, because last year you had dominant teams. Like the Gonzaga and Baylor teams were dominant. The only thing I had concerns about was Baylor getting bounced early, because we've seen dominant Baylor teams get bounced early. Baylor went on to win the tournament, in case you remember, and just overpowered Gonzaga, which I didn't think was going to happen, but they actually did overpower Gonzaga. Gonzaga's back this year, but they're not nearly as dominant. Yes, they're a number one seed. They're the overall number one. Not nearly the same squad. Gonzaga is vulnerable. The good news for Gonzaga is they got a very favorable draw. Who else got a favorable draw that's inexplicable? Duke. Duke and Coach K's farewell season got put in the same bracket as Gonzaga with a equally cakewalky bracket. I'll be perfectly honest with you. Gonzaga's biggest concern is literally if Memphis shows up to play the opening weekend. Because Penny Hardaway has a very talented squad of players in the 9 seed. They were injured for most of the year. Very inconsistent throughout the season, just to be perfectly blank. But then got rolling to close out the year. So Memphis actually does have the squad capable of making a run and upsetting Gonzaga. Outside of this, I don't think this bracket is remotely any good in the West region. And Duke is absolutely not a number 2 seed. Point blank, Duke is not a number 2 seed. I don't know how they got the number 2 seed, being the ACC was down this year. Truth be told, I don't even think, if it wasn't for the fact that Duke got such a favorable bracket, I don't even think the ACC is making it out of this first weekend, besides Duke. Because I don't think North Carolina is that good. Virginia Tech won the ACC tournament, highlighting how soft the ACC was this year, to be perfectly honest. I don't think the ACC would have made it out of the opening weekend if not for Duke getting such a favorable bracket. If Duke and Tennessee, who should have been the number 2 seed in the West, if they had flip-flopped, I would actually have said that would have been Duke's best chance of advancing, because that's where Duke should have been flip-flopped. They should have been sent to the South in lieu of Tennessee, who somehow got a 3 seed, even though they're better than Villanova, who got the 2 seed. Someone has to explain to me how these teams get seeded. Tennessee is number 5 in KenPom. They're top 10 in the RPI, yet somehow they got a 3 seed. That is just wild. It is wild how these selection committees roll. It is wild. Can't get over that. Dominated the SEC tournament final yesterday. Cannot get over that. Won the SEC. Oh, man. I can't. I just can't. Anyway. Well, like I said, I'm not going to go too far in depth because I'm going to break down each region as we get the brackets ready. We'll have the bracket pool available. My bracket pool thoughts available before ahead of Thursday. But yeah, kind of crazy. The only other that was suspect was Michigan getting in, but not as one of the last 4 teams in. How Michigan did not end up in a playing game also needs to be investigated. I mean, man, some of these teams, you got 9 Big Ten schools in. I mean, Big Ten was good, but yeah. Yeah. We're just hoping that one of the Big Ten schools makes a run to justify this, because truth be told, it would not be a shock to me at all if maybe you get 1, maybe 2 Big Ten schools into the Sweet 16. It would not be a shock to me. I'm sorry. There is a very legit argument you can make. And again, Michigan is not in the playing game versus Rutgers and Notre Dame, who are in the playing. Oh man, that's wild. That's kind of wild. But yeah, so the West, You got the South, Arizona, probably the closest to a a team that you could feel somewhat safe about because talent wise, they're good enough and they're deep. They're deep enough that I can actually see them in a Final Four because I think they're flat out better than the other squads in their region, and they don't need the seeding bracket help to do it. I just think that outside of all of them, yes, Houston can give Arizona some trouble if they get it to Sweet 16, but it's not as though some of these teams are infallible. I just look at it as a case where, we can definitely see Arizona. I mean, you got a 2 seed in Villanova. Tennessee, again, that would be an Elite 8 matchup. Like, that's the next closest team that could actually knock off Arizona, in my opinion. I'm just looking at the rest of the teams in this region, and I'm looking at it and I'm saying, yeah, Arizona's better than these teams. And yes, I know folks are saying, well, you kind of slammed the West, but it's more along the lines of the teams in the South, collectively, they have a higher floor than most of the teams in the West. They're just more solid overall. I would still take Michigan over most of the teams in the West. It's just the fact that Michigan not having to go into a playing game is just kind of wild to me. Based off of, if we're just going by record and in some of the conference comparisons, Michigan should have had to go into a playing game. There's just not, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Like, Michigan did not do well enough to not be one of the last 4 teams in. But yeah, to me, the South looks very much down to Tennessee and Arizona. Like, to me, the biggest knock I can put on Tennessee is the fact that they are still coached by Rick Barnes, and I will never get over the fact that Texas team he had with Kevin Durant underachieved as badly as it did in the tournament. Like, I can never get over that. That was the best team Rick Barnes ever had. Like, complete flame out in the tournament. But anyway, I'm gonna keep moving on because we'll keep this one short. But yeah, the South, they made some interesting choices. The selection committee, because I thought they bailed out Duke with a weaker bottom half of the bracket. Gonzaga got the benefit of having the weakest region overall because they're the overall number 1 seed. That's usually how it works. But I think the South is pretty lackluster as well. The East region, I think you could get a lot of fireworks here. Just from the standpoint of, I don't trust Marquette or North Carolina. So I think Baylor should be getting through to the second weekend. St. Mary's is good enough to knock off UCLA. UCLA can make it to the Final Four again. UCLA, the Johnny Juzang and the boys, they didn't read their press clippings. They played a solid year, and truth be told, they didn't go too crazy throughout the year. They didn't have massive peaks and valleys. They were pretty consistent. They could easily elevate their game again in the tournament and start hitting outside shots to make a run. That's the threat to Baylor. UCLA as a 4 seed, that's danger. UCLA easily could have been in one of these other regions as a higher seed than a 4 seed. That's why I kind of question some of these seedings, because I look at this and I'm saying they could have put UCLA in the spot of Texas Tech, have Texas Tech as a 4 seed, UCLA as a 3 seed, and actually have Duke play somebody in the bottom half of the bracket. because, I'm not sold on Arkansas. I'm not sold on Alabama, in the West region, but I can look in the East and I can look at St. Mary's, UCLA, Texas, even Murray State is kind of dangerous in a way. I know what I'm gonna get out of Purdue. They'll be solid, but they're beatable. The wild cards I'm looking at, though, and I just spelled them out: St. Mary's, UCLA, Texas, and Murray State. Those teams actually have size and they can shoot. They can shoot. So it kind of comes down to what Kentucky team do we get in the 2 seed? Because Kentucky has talent. They had talent last year, but they were just too young. They're a little bit more seasoned. And truth be told, people are expecting Kentucky to make a run this year. I think normally this would have been fine. But the East actually has enough monkey wrenches thrown into it that should have been in other regions that's not as clean cut as it goes. So to me, like, initial thoughts, I'm not as sold on because I know Kentucky's going to be a popular pick. They're a 2 seed. People like to go with their high seeds. I think Kentucky's in one of the more dangerous spots just because there are enough sharks in the water that could actually take them out. And, again, Baylor, defending champs, still 1 seed. They're going to get some steam, too, in terms of popular picks. Depending on your bracket format, it may not be the worst thing in the world to try to go for Baylor getting knocked out. I think Baylor should be moving into the Elite Eight, but it's not exactly a given. I think this is the region where you have some question marks being raised because of what was slotted in some of these other regions. So the East, I definitely think you could get some interesting matchups moving on. And then for the Midwest, pretty by the number season by Kansas, strong year in the Big 12, weren't really challenged. We'll see what they come up with in the tournament. Like, could Kansas make a run into the Final Four? Yeah. But the problem is, I didn't really see enough of Kansas being challenged in the Big 12. And, Iowa State got in, but, weren't that impressive. They get a favorable matchup against LSU because LSU finally, Will Wade got fired, like, we're talking multiple years after being caught on the FBI wiretap. Everyone knows he's on the FBI wiretap, but the NCAA just finally decided to serve LSU with the notice of allegations, and then LSU decided to fire Will Wade less than 24 hours later. He was on the wiretap for years, folks. LSU just kept letting him coach, let him get in the tournament. No worries. NCAA hasn't come down on us yet. As soon as the NCAA says, okay, we may start investigating you, Will Wade finally fired. Right before the tournament. We're being transparent. Oh, man. Just wild. It's literally on an FBI wiretap. I mean, come on. It's an FBI wiretap. It's like, come on. You can't make this stuff up. You can't make this stuff up. He was still coaching for years after being caught on a wiretap. And everyone was just on board with this. I got wild. Anyway, keep moving on. Because in this Midwest region, I've watched Providence play. They're the 4 seed. They had a good year, but man, I didn't think the Big East was that good. It just wasn't. So, it's hard for me to kind of take, because I thought Iowa was fine. It's fine. like nothing crazy, but Richmond did have a nice showing in the 8-10 tournament. They can pose a problem for teams. That is a 5-12 matchup to look out for because I think Richmond's pretty good. And, Iowa's pretty solid. Not a whole lot to fall in love with, but it's solid. But solid can get beat in the tournament if somebody gets hot shooting from one game. And there you go. But this Providence team, it's fine. I guess they're a 4 seed. It's like, I'm not, like, some of these teams feel overseeded to me. Like, I could have easily seen Providence being a 6 seed. Like, it's like, I wouldn't have batted an eyelash if they got seeded 6. Like, as a 4 seed, you're like, okay, I guess. Like, you're looking at some of these teams, you're just like, really? I don't see it. So, in this region, you're looking at Wisconsin, who, again, not that impressive. Yeah, they won games in the Big Ten, but, Big Ten got a lot of teams in. I think they're all kind of in, like, a lot of parity. I don't necessarily see the Big Ten standing out this tournament. They got a lot of teams in, but I think they're going to send a lot of teams home as well. We'll see. I'm not impressed by Wisconsin. Colgate's interesting enough as a 14 seed because they dominated the Patriot League. They put up a lot of points. They can get hot shooting. That's not a gimme matchup for Wisconsin. Look, if you guys are looking for upset bids, that could get a little tricky. And, we'll see what LSU team shows up. But to me, LSU is talented enough. They get past Iowa State. They can beat Wisconsin. That's not a shocker at all. Yes, technically it's an upset, but to me, I think they're basically, you're looking at the roster on the paper like it's a coin flip matchup. USC, solid. Auburn, good run throughout the season. I just look at it as like Auburn and Kentucky both getting 2 seeds. That's a little, again, I think Tennessee's better than both of these teams. I think they were better. I mean, yes, they were fine, but it's like I'm not exactly sold on some of these teams. So Auburn, yes, they should be able to move on at least to the second weekend. But once they get to the second weekend, I think the competition ratcheting up is going to be an issue for Auburn. So very curious to see how the Midwest goes, because to me, that's the most blah region. Like, I look at some of these matchups and I'm saying to myself, if they had just swapped in 1 or 2 teams, you might have a more clear-cut picture of how this region should go. But the Midwest is solid, but nothing seems stand out to me in terms of region. So one of these teams is going to get to the Final Four, and that's probably the region where I'm going to pick against in the Final Four, because none of those teams actually looks like a championship contender to me. So those are my initial thoughts on the tournament. I'll do a full breakdown of each region as we gotta move on during the week. But yeah, these are my initial thoughts for Sunday, and yeah, we'll get into it as the week progresses, leading up to Thursday. So have a good night, everyone, or good morning by the time you're reading this or hearing this. And yeah, until next time, but be good and be well. Have a good one.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy Throwdown Podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and all other major outlets.